I have a question about sadness. Sadness I get confused about because there are things that happen in life. I have a son going to Iraq in the summer. And also when you have close friends, I know it's not a death, but missing them, missing their physicalness and missing their friendship, I just feel like the sadness has to come out, but that doesn't feel good, so I get confused about sadness.
It's an interesting emotion, isn't it? There are a number of things that we want to give you here. This is a very good place to begin, because we talked just a little bit ago about if there is a condition that you can't change. And when you focus upon the condition as it is, it causes you to feel uncomfortable, as in this case, sad. Then you're sort of just stuck with sad, aren't you? In other words, you can't do anything about it. You can't change it. So, is there an alternative? Is it possible for a condition to remain static and your response to it to change? It's a big question. It's a question that when we find the answer, will set you free.
I want to say I know I can't control the situation, but there's that, my son's going far away.
We are going to be blunt and bold first, and then we'll try to make up for it later. It requires stepping back and looking from a broader perspective. That's always what coming into alignment with source energy is, in fact. So we talked about this current and how this current's moving toward who you really are, no matter what. So focus for a little bit on your son's going far away and feel the discomfort of that within you. In other words, truly an upstream thought. And you can amplify that by saying, not only is he going far away, but it is a uncomfortable at best, dangerous at worst condition, more and more upstream. So now, is there anything that you could say that takes some of the stress out of that for you? In other words, can you talk about this situation in a way that causes you to relax and begin moving with the current a bit?
Mm-hmm.
Try.
My belief system tells me that we all have our own paths to walk and our lessons to learn, and for some reason he needs to go there for the bigger plan that I could never grasp. So that helps me when I see people doing things. I just say that's part of their learning.
Now, when you say that, initially, does it give you any sense of relief?
Yes.
So, potentially, if you can get a little bit of relief from a statement like that, then if you could continue to reach for better feeling statements, potentially you could line up with this in a way that you could maintain your feeling of well-being regardless of the condition. Does that seem possible?
Yeah, but there's always the danger part. I see him all right, and I put the light around him, and I pray to keep him safe, but the reality is just difficult.
Well, it is difficult to say the least, but this is an opportunity for you to discover some resources that you don't often tap into. We've noticed that for most people, you can be pretty sloppy in your thinking and get by pretty darn well, because the well-being of who you are and the well-being of your environment and the well-being of all that is so pervasive. As you look around your planet at the well-being that exists in comparison with the pockets of not well-being, it's just an extraordinary ratio. This is the thing that we so much want you to hear. Oh, you're really going to like this. You think, or at least we will. You think that you feel bad because you can't control the experience of your son. But we want to project to you that the reason that you feel bad is because the source energy part of you sees him one way, and in your worry, you are contradicting that aspect of your own self. In other words, through life, you have given many rockets of desire relative to him. He's been in your vibrational escrow again and again and again and again on so many different subjects. So you have this vibrational relationship with him that the source energy part of you knows and has become. And when you think thoughts that contradict that, you don't feel so good. When you think a thought like, I am not worthy, that thought is a debilitating thought because it is so contrary to how your source feels about you. When you think a thought like, something bad is going to happen to my son, the reason that that feels so bad is not because something is going to happen to your son, is because that thought contradicts the broader knowing, you see. Now we know, we can feel it even in this room. There are those who would say, but Abraham, she cannot control the life experience of someone else. In other words, she cannot control what actually happens. And we say, that may or may not be true. You have powerful influence. But the sadness that you're talking about is not because something's going to happen to your son. The sadness that you are experiencing is because you're contradicting your own thought on a subject. In other words, it's not different than taking a club and beating yourself about the head. It's painful in the same way. You cannot think thoughts in opposition to who you really are and what you really know without causing discomfort within you. And somehow that's just got to be helpful. Now we know there are parents who would say, but I worried about my son and he did die. But we want to say to you, there are billions of parents who have had billions of worrisome, sleepless nights over things that never happened. They just used it as one more excuse for one more moment to keep themselves from flowing with the energy that is truly the source energy that is you. In other words, we want to find a way to explain to you that negative emotion is always about the same thing. It's about you taking a subject and activating it within you in such a contrary way to who you really are and what you really know, that you're using that subject as your temporary excuse to just pinch yourself off from the life force that would be there otherwise. You got this rip-roaring stream going, life's going along very well. You've become the source energy part of you is all frisky and bushy-tailed over there, bright-eyed, just in love with life, so in love with life because of all that you've been living, just lapping it up. The energy's moving, the river's flowing, and then you find this debilitating thought and you focus upon it. Oh, what an incredible, uncomfortable experience, you see. And so then people say, well, you can't promise her that nothing will happen. And we say, we can promise you that if you will stay in vibrational alignment with who you are, you'll feel good. And we can promise you that your son will have his own life. And we can promise you that your son is tuned in, tapped in, turned on. We can promise you that it is not his intention for something negative to happen to him. We can promise you that while you do not have creative control over what happens to him, you do have creative control over how you feel in the moment. This is a wonderful opportunity. In fact, one that the two of you chatted about before any of you got here. It would be nice to experience some true unconditional love. People talk about unconditional love all the time, but almost no one lives it. Most everyone says, well, I can feel good under these conditions, but I cannot feel good under those conditions. So let's change those conditions and then I will feel better. And we say, how's that working out? That's what that whole awful war is about also, isn't it? Let's try to change some conditions so that we can all feel better. And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse because it is not the way to go about it. The way to go about it is to live the condition, give birth to what you prefer, and turn your undivided attention toward what you want. Now let us give you some words that will help you also. We want you to know that while there are many things that many people choose in the form of contrast that you probably would not choose for yourself, There are people that are living contrasting experiences that are giving birth to powerful rockets of desires that not only will serve them for all of the rest of their life and beyond, but are of advantage to all that is too. And so we want you to try to get hold of the idea that even when these young people put themselves in situations where they are in peril or in danger or in discomfort, that from those powerful contrasting experience always erupt clarity of desire that the source energy part of them becomes and embraces, that gives them a power and an energy and a clarity that is difficult to find words to describe. In other words, even a situation that just looks so bleak and like something that you would never ever want to participate in or have anybody that you care about participate in, there is an energy that is born out of environments that are like that are truly life-giving. So much so that when you talk to people who have been in wars, long after they have been in war, sometimes these young men are there for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then they move on to so many other things in their life, and many, many years later, that's still the part of their life that they're talking about most, because it was a part of their life that the energy was moving in the most powerful way. So as you step back as a mother or as someone who cares, and you acknowledge, I would not deprive my child of an opportunity to give birth to rockets of desire. I would not deprive my child of an opportunity to fulfill his own intentions or live his own dreams. And while I cannot understand why he chooses as he chooses, I can feel the energy that is surrounded. I can feel the resolve within him. I can feel the alignment with his intention that is within him. I can feel the clarity of his being. And so, as you step back and try to view him and his decision through the eyes of your own inner being, you will find yourself being in a position where you would not try to prevent him from doing that even if you could, because you realize that in all life there is contrast, and in all contrast there is a summoning of energy. And so now what you wish for him is not that he does not go. What you're wishing for him is an alignment with his resolve. You want him to get tuned in, tapped in, turned on. You want this desire that is within him and the energy that is pulling through him to give him the power and the clarity and the stamina for all that he will need. He will be more alive during that time than he will ever be in his entire lifetime. Would you deprive him of an opportunity of all of that life running through him? You see what we're getting at?
Yes, I do.
So then, now all you have to deal with is your sadness or your worry, and that is only a product of whether you choose an upstream thought or a downstream thought. You have control over the way you feel. So what you want to begin to say is, the majority of the worry that I have put myself through relative to this or anything has been because of my choice of thoughts, even more so than it has been because of my observation of conditions. The hardest thing about a war like this, the hardest thing is for the parents, because the kids are over there, they've got the energy being pulled through them, and so they are being given this life force, this extra clarity, this extra strength. In other words, most of them, as you visit with them, do not want to stop doing what they're doing. They're caught up in the energy stream of all of that, you see. And so it's the parents that are not there, that don't have the benefit of all that energy pulling through them, that are experiencing the greatest discomfort in all of that. And when you finally realize that you don't get to choose for anyone what they do, they are creating their own experience, but that you do get to choose whether you line up with your own desires relative to something or not, and you begin to practice the direction of your own thought, you're going to discover that you can actually tap into the energy stream of your own source energy and actually feel the same elation that you might feel if you were there with all of that energy being called through you. Every situation in the world, you could look at any situation and you can call it awful or you can call it beneficial. And what you're going to begin to discover is that the source energy within you will never push against it.